Hello, everyone. It's great to welcome you here to the Consortium of Universities for Global Health virtual Global Health Week. My name is Lori Dupreet Brown. I'm from the University of Wisconsin School of Human Ecology, and I work on matters related to global health and human ecology. And today I'm going to be talking about SDG 360 thinking, a global human ecology strategy for equity, prosperity, and care of the earth. That is no small order in these times, but I do think we have to just think big and think about equity and thriving really at all times, especially in challenging times. And I've kind of prepared this session with that in mind. We have about 180 people registered today. Normally, some of those people are planning to watch the recording, so we'll probably be a smaller group online. Many of you have been at the University of Wisconsin for quality improvement training, for most of you heard about this through the Consortium of Universities for Global Health. Here we'll be, and you'll have a chance to meet each other. We have a couple of interactive segments today. So this is more like a relaxed workshop, or we're not gonna go over 20 things fast. We're gonna go over 3 or 4 things with some depth, revisit the notion of global health, and then look at how we can apply the SDGs to health and center health in that way. I also have an app that the Data Science Institute at UW has developed, and I'll be sharing that with you, and you'll be able to log in. And as soon as it's fully functional, you'll be among the first people to use it. So with that, I think what I'll do is, right now there could be a few more people coming on, but I think I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Great. So SDG 360 thinking, a global human ecology strategy for equity, prosperity, and care of the earth. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Consortium of Universities for Global Health Community. We're going to do some thinking together today and getting a chance to work on some of the challenges that are right on your desk at home, and maybe doing a big think and scoping out into the ecosystem health, and then diving into the details. By moving back and forth at those 2 scales, hopefully we'll be able to do more efficient and effective and equitable work. Okay. If you signed up based on the promotional materials, here's what you were promised: to learn about effective strategies to advance community health by using the SDG framework. It's not so much about goals in this work, but thinking with those ideas so that you make connections and you get kind of the clarity of purpose. The goals can be overwhelming, but when you really think about them and use them with visualizations and clear thinking, it actually can be a great tool for coordinating complex work. And most of our challenges are complex, and so we need clear and sophisticated strategies really to respond to them. We'll have an overview of the SDGs. You'll be learning to use a new app that is under development, and you'll get to share your work as well. So if you like the idea of sharing what you do with others, there will be a chance to do that toward the end. I want to begin by doing a land acknowledgement. This has become a practice around the world, but I know many international partners here might not be familiar with it. We like to make sure that we acknowledge the history of the land that we're on. I am here at the University of Wisconsin. I'm in my home right now, and we're both UW and my home are on Ho-Chunk land. And the Ho-Chunk people have been here for thousands of years, and there's a history of colonization that informs what we do together now. And now UW-Madison respects the sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the other First Nations, but there's still really work to be done to work with that historical perspective in mind. And I like when I do a land acknowledgement, I like to use the words of our students. The students from the Madison's Multicultural Student Center Native Nations Working Group took the UW statement and added these words in red. And they said, as we engage with each other in education, research, and service, let's consider, remember, not forget the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us here together now. And as we learn, reflect, and act together, let's uncover and acknowledge such truths to find ways forward every day. And so, you know, SDGs allow us to do that in certain ways. And when we think about the equity aspects of the SDGs, I'll talk more about that. This is a piece of an ancient canoe that was found maybe 300 yards from where I'm sitting about a year ago. So it's real, and there are artifacts and traces of and a lot and a vibrant community that's doing a lot around language preservation and more as well. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to look at the evolving concept of global health because it's nice to share that and talk about it. We're going to use SDG 360 thinking. You're going to do some practical exercises. You're going to be taking something that you're working on and making a statement that will be the basis of the exercise. So you can start thinking now about what that might be. I'm going to guide you through a process, but just so you can, you know, be wandering in your mind about what am I going to concentrate on later. We're going to create some visualizations using this app, and then we'll share our work. And if there's time, I have some thoughts about what it means to now take action on these insights, how to integrate it with planning, improvement, and innovation. And I've included those slides, whether we go through them or not, because I want you to have them. So there's sort of a little extra part there that we may or may not get to. So I'm going to be talking about 5 ways to use the SDGs to advance health. And I really think the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm also someone who's capable of critiquing them, and I might do that at the end. But more importantly, 193 countries have signed on, and they're really useful pathways to human thriving and sustainability. And that's the focus here, to use them and use them as tools for optimization and equity and helping us maybe make connections and see things that we're not seeing. And that's helpful to experts as well as generous, because the beauty of expertise is that you really know how to focus. So, you know, scientists can use this tool, practitioners can use the tool, communities can use this tool. Before you all signed on, someone was mentioning grant proposals might ask you to relate your work to the SDGs, and this app can help you make a graph and a visualization and think about those connections so that you can think about those broader impacts or responsiveness in order to get the resources that you need to do what you're doing. So there's a lot of layers. It can help with implementation. It can help with clarity of purpose. It can help with getting resources and, you know, doing good science as well. So is there an app for that? Yes, there is the SDG 360 Thinking app, and we will get a chance to use it later. It's not totally out there, but you are going to get to log in and be among the first registrants. And I wanted to acknowledge the many partners that have been part of this conversation over time. The SDG 360 Thinking really since 2018. And then some of you who've been involved in quality and improvement work many, many more years. But we have the American Family Data Science Institute and the digital learning unit at UW-Madison who prepared the app. We have international partners in Guadalajara, Mexico. The IPEC group from Malawi has been part of this conversation, and they're partners of mine. Universities such as the University of Guadalajara, the Harvard School of Public Health, UW-Madison, Consortium of Universities of Global Health, and the Women in Global Health. So all of these thought partners, EPIC Network, as well as the Mayor's Innovation Project and the UN Habitat as well. Here you have a picture of my school, the School of Human Ecology at UW-Madison, because they provided a lot of the frameworks and resources as well. So global health and human ecology in times of crisis. What is that all about? Well, complex crises are here. And I think a lot of us in different ways feel like we are that exclamation point, some more than others, right? But we have, you know, health challenges, obviously, violence, severe hunger, conflict, drought, spread of disease, displacement. all of those things converging, so that whatever we were doing before that was holistic and equity oriented and rapid, we need to do more of that for reaching more and faster than ever before. And so because it's a complex crisis, we really need to think differently maybe and look toward new models of global health. And I think one of the ways I think it's really important to think about global health is, I know I'm guilty of this. I used to think of it as a here to there thing. I'm going somewhere to do global health. But really, when we're doing global health, we're going from here to everywhere, because our mindset and what we know and the comparative set of issues we're able to think about enlarges. And we care about places that we don't forget about just because we leave them. And everybody, whether I'm going to Malawi or Shalom, who's on this call, is going to Ghana or coming to the US, we're all going from our home, to everywhere. And all of our worlds are getting larger and converging. So it's a definition of global health that is multi-centered and has centers in global north, global south, all these places, rather than being the mindset of a global north to global south, global health, which I think is really dated and not useful. We have so much to learn, from each other altogether. Some of the origins of the 360 thinking come from global health teaching that I've been doing over the years, as well as some of these nested models for global health, where you see this little arrow here where you have personal health in the middle, and then we have our population health, and then we have these ecosystem health parameters, and that can be thought of as the Sustainable Development Goal indicators. There are indicators for all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and then we have these more science-based or sort of geological and physical planetary vital signs. And these are all nested in ways that can give us some different layers and levels of description for global health, with the goal of producing as much well-being over on the right as we can with the resources that we have. And this is a modified version of the donut that you might be familiar with, where we have this safe space for humanity. Usually it's green, but I've made mine blue. And this is a safe space, not just for humanity, but for life, for planetary well-being. So other life forms as well. And one thing I want to say about this graphic is often we think that to have more well-being, we have to use more resources. And while that may be true in some cases, it's sort of implying that we always deploy resources for health. And there's really a lot of excess consumption and meaningless consumption or wasteful consumption of resources, so that there are scenarios where with fewer resources we're actually getting more health across the board. We have to increasingly look for those. And I think about SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, as a critical one in that way. You see that in healthcare and just in life overall. The One Health model is a really important kind of new concept in global health. I say new because it takes things about 17 years to get in use, in practice, from when they're thought of. And so it's the idea that the health of humans, animals, plants, and built in natural environments are all interrelated. And this animal environment human interface is where health really happens. It's a really optimizing, science-based way to think about it. And then we have the planetary health model, which gets more at the complexity of the different causalities. And here, you have the underlying drivers of health. Then you have the second label there, the ecological drivers. Then you have these proximate causes, things like air quality, food, access to fresh water, natural hazards. Healthcare providers have to deal with what happens when those things aren't in place. And often there are matters of justice that keep those things from in place. So when we start thinking systemically with the SDGs, we get to be able to address underlying drivers, ecological drivers, and proximate causes. So things like, the kind of care we provide and services and some of these mediating factors can be dealt with better. So the health effects they have here: malnutrition, infectious disease, non-communicable disease, displacement and conflict, and mental health. Those are the things we think of as inside the health. But all these systemic causes are there. And we, as healthcare professionals and public health, we can be directly working on these, or at least doing advocacy and citizenship and being, informed members of society there. So global health has a citizen component and a care component and a prevention component. In terms of the human ecology aspect, I just want to say a few of the big ideas. Human ecologists help, contribute by socio-ecological modeling, fifth systems thinking, action for social justice, and understanding human development across the life course, sort of healthy human development and how to foster that. It also gets at arts-based approaches, which not just for making other people well, but sometimes I think providers themselves need the art-based approaches for self-care and for going, staying the distance. So we talk about care of the caretaker, and part of that is, being around peers and having jobs that are designed well, but having expression through the arts, I think, is part of it. And then sustainable economies, both at the micro and macro level. So it's a very transdisciplinary complement to what we think about as global health. Here's a socio-ecological model that many of you are familiar with. This is the Institute of Medicine model. This comes out of human ecology and psychology and has been used extensively in public health. And again, many of you, for your work to be effective, to eradicate that disease or promote that health state, you need to be working at all of these levels at once, at the individual, community, social, and systemic level. I think perspective taking is important as well. And this is kind of a fun slide, because if you look at it, everybody's using something to help them see. But if you think about what that magnifying glass on the top right corner does, and what these safety goggles do, and what this little girl does with her telescope, different tools help us to see so differently. They're different perspectives. And so public health and human ecology are two fields that really focus on mixed methods and having those kinds of competencies. And both in terms of scientific methods, are you using narratives? Are you using data? Are you using, a close-up look of a magnifying glass, or trying to see the stars in a telescope? That's one part of it. And then the other part of perspective taking is different kinds of people and different positions in society, different identities and abilities and so forth, so that we're really informing, what the full lived experiences of people. You can see a little bit of that in there as well. So perspective taking is really important. And then another component of human ecology that, again, we talk about in global health a lot, and very relevant for applying the SDGs. We have state-provided services and functions, we have civil society, and we have the private sector. And it's really a wild ecosystem, and probably that's the most healthy thing, right? To have a lot of different ways that people are relating to each other, so that you have something that is robust and resilient because of its complexity. So that is another thing that we think about a lot: strong organizations and systems and complex systems in the human ecology model. The other thing before we get into the SDGs is tools, and from outside of the global health discipline, it's hard to get outside yourself, but really thinking about challenging the global health paradigm in theory and practice, making sure we question overly medicalized approaches, making sure we question when leadership isn't inclusive, or when there's global north domination of matters, or if there's colonial mindsets beyond colonial legal systems persisting. Sometimes we can get into what simple, overly simple or one size fits all mindsets that we have to question. And sometimes we tolerate or almost accept inequity. We think we have a 20-year plan to eradicate malnutrition. I mean, what does that really mean? To say it's saying we're going to accept malnutrition for 20 years. When we had COVID that affected everyone, we didn't have anyone talking about 20-year plans. So, some urgency around equity is really important. And I think too, as I mentioned earlier, failure to address root causes in relation to the dynamics between not just thinking about population, but population, consumption, technology, and equity, thinking about those things systemically. And then finally, the holy grail that we work for and probably never get there, mutual respect, mutual benefits, and two-way learning. And then deep engagement and the courage to continue doing these kinds of reflections in an adaptive and authentic way. So those are some kind of thoughts about what global health is and can be. They're familiar to everybody, but we get in our little silos or in a job, and sometimes you don't have the luxury of thinking about those big ideas and how, you know, they are getting better and clearer. And so we'll have a chance to share in a minute. We're going to have some small group conversation, but I want to walk you through briefly the genealogy that got us to the SDGs. Genealogy, I'm thinking about who's your grandmother, who's your, you know, mother, and that kind of thing. So our grandmother is the Alma Ata Convention Declaration, Health for All by the year 2000. And it was a very holistic, primary healthcare oriented program that included a lot of environmental concerns right from the beginning. A lot of health folks like me, I graduated from high school in 1978, worked under this paradigm. I mean, yeah, 78, 79. And so while there is a trajectory getting to the SDGs that comes from the environmental movement, for health folks, we came from Alma Ata and then the Millennium Development Goals. It's still a conversation. The Millennium Development Goals were the year 2000 to 2015. What are the things we're going to do? And they started out as a declaration and quickly shifted to having goals because they wanted to have metrics and accountability. And we can debate a lot about whether a framework or goals are a better thing, but they complement each other well. So when many of you are familiar with this, and a lot of programs are still kind of in this mindset, even though the SDGs have been in place now since 2015, some of the critiques of this, that we didn't have chronic disease included, we didn't have mental health, a number of other things weren't that visible. And so in 2015, the call was, let's finish the job of these MDGs. We're not leaving them. But we're going to be more holistic and more systemic with the work. So we're going to advance in health. Around health, we're going to work for universal healthcare. And we're going to do a bunch of other things. And so here in 2015, you have these 17 sustainable development goals being adopted as a way of continuing the MDGs and taking the wisdom from that era now. So what does this mean for health is what we'll talk about today. I am both a big critic and a big fan of the MDGs. I mean, the SDGs. One of the things that's really important to me is the localization of the SDGs. A lot of the SDG work has been at the national level, national strategies, but most of the things that really need to change are governed and implemented at more local levels, within health systems, at the district level, at the clinic, local mayors, small communities. They decide what happens with the trash, or what happens when there's a flood. So really thinking about local action is important, and I get really excited about that kind of community-based work, both in health and throughout. So I have, for your viewing pleasure, there's a couple of breaks you'll get. One is going to be a chance to chat with each other in a few minutes, but this is just to remind you that we're not just global health people focusing on data, but that we are part of a movement. And so you're going to see some familiar faces here. I like to joke, a few of my personal friends said they would get together and make this video for me. You can decide if you think that these really are my personal friends or not, but we're going to watch a really brief video that goes over what are the 17 sustainable development goals. I show this knowing that most people here already know. However, it's a nice tool to use, and it's just nice to give yourself another kind of refresh, because now we're going to be thinking about how would you use this as a cyclical, holistic kind of systemic framework rather than kind of separate targets. So here goes. If you can't hear, just give me a signal.
We can be. We must be the first generation to end extreme poverty.
The generation
Most determined
to fight injustice and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
This is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
with no one left behind.
We live in a world where nobody
Anywhere lives in extreme poverty. Where no one
wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We
We will live in a world where no child has to die.
diseases we know how to cure, and where proper health care
Is a lifelong right for us all.
we will live in a world give us the knowledge
And skills.
for a fulfilling life. We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities to thrive and be powerful and safe.
We cannot succeed. We will live in a world where all people can get clean water and proper toilets
At school and work.
sustainable energy for everyone, heat, light, and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We'll live in a world where economies prosper and new wealth
Leads to decent jobs.
for everyone.
And we will live in a world where our industry, our infrastructure, and our
Best innovations.
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
we will live in a world where prejudices and extremes of equality are refused.
Inside our countries and between different countries. Where people live in cities and communities
That are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
What we consume. Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth. We live in a world that is decisively rolling back from climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas. Where we restore
Life on land. Forests, animals.
the earth.
With peace between and inside countries. Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries, we their people,
Work together.
and partnerships of all kinds to
Make
make
this one a reality. The United Nations global goals.
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Whoops. So I'd like you to, now I am gonna let you have a little time to think and chat. I think there are enough of us. I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. I think there are enough of us that it would be enjoyable to just go into some breakout rooms and say hi to other people and meet each other. And we'll take maybe 5 minutes to do that. And maybe you can, just talk a little bit about what you're hoping to learn or what these initial thoughts have sparked in your minds. And then we'll come back and we're going to dig into what are these 5 ways that the SDGs can be used to make healthcare more effective and impactful and, help us to foster human thriving. So I am going to create I'm going to create, how many are we here? Let's see. I'm going to create 7 breakout rooms. And I'm going to assign you automatically. And then I'll call you back in about 5 minutes. So enjoy meeting everybody, each other. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to meet someone new and share a few thoughts about global health. We've had a chance just to reflect on, what challenging work it is and what challenging times. And maybe now we'll start to explore how the SDGs can be used to maybe help us address the complexity in an effective way. And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and we're going to kind of run through what are these, these 5 ways of using the SDGs in this 360 thinking kind of way. And I want to say something. First of all, I'm not a big fan of novelty. I think making stuff up is much less interesting than discovering what amazing things are happening around you. And so I view this as an approach that is emergent, and the 5 strategies are really things that, I and others noticed were happening in a lot of places with the SDGs. So it's not something that comes out of a big think. It comes out of careful noticing of what works and how are people finding ways to make sense of this framework. So, and it was it's enjoyable, to think about it that way. So with that, I am going to share my screen and just say a little bit about one of the reasons, to talk about it as 5 ways is these are 5 things that you might notice happening that I think work. There are probably more than 5, but it's nice to mention that there are 5 because it's a little bit like, 5 ways. People want to know what the 5 are. So I'm not going to hold out on you. I'm going to tell you early, and then we'll go through them one by one. But the first image around the SDGs that made me think about 360 thinking is this very familiar graph from the World Health Organization about health in the SDG era. And it makes sense to put health in the middle. And I didn't question this for a while. It's like health is in the middle. But as I thought about it over time, you can really look at this interstitial space and what's happening between health and life on land, what's happening between health and gender equity. Each of these has an overlap with health. But not only that, no sort of single frame or one moment in time is really going to do it. And to make the SDGs work for thriving, we also have to center other things. So rather than thinking of it as health is in the middle because I work in health, which is what I used to think, I think that this SDG approach, it's more like a circle dance. And there are times when I need to put health in the middle and times when I want to put other things like gender equity. I spend a lot of time putting that in the middle. Cities and what happens in sustainable communities is something, when you put that in the middle, it looks different. We are health people and we're going to be putting health in the middle. And WHO gave us some great, ideas about how good health and well-being could be done better if you saw these connections. So, I encourage you to come back to this, and particularly 1 through 10, prioritizing the health needs of the poor, health and number 1, addressing malnutrition, that's number 3 and number 2, making sure that education supports health and health equity, that's getting at the interrelationship between 3 and 4, gender equity, water, clean water. I think clean water and health and that linkage is one that we've often emphasized, the health professionals and the health side, and yet the engineering and clean water side could prevent the need for, a lot of those health services. So putting health in the middle is something that WHO and others have been encouraging us to do for a while. And just to review, because we all have a lot of things going on and we may not have it at the top of mind, not only memorizing the 17 SDGs, but what is 3.5 and 3.1 and 4? So there are 9 health targets. The one that gets talked about most is 3.8, the universal health coverage, but reducing maternal mortality, that again, carrying that over from the MDGs, making sure we go the distance. Same with 3.2, the under 5 death, fighting communicable disease, again, carried over. Reducing mortality from non-communicable disease and promoting mental health is a new target from the SDGs, and it's really important. Preventing and treating substance abuse is a separate SDG in this way of thinking about it. Reducing road injuries and death. Injury, other kinds of injury are not here. And that's something that we could talk about. It's very complicated to get firearm injury, for example, into these models and how we would classify it. But it's another kind of injury that is really important. Reproductive health care, and then illness related to hazardous and chemical pollution. So that's pretty comprehensive. It's a tall order. You can just see how so many of these are related to determinants of health, and we really can't handle them only from the clinic. So another way of, again, encircling and thinking 360 about health are these 2 graphics, again, from WHO, where they've shown us what I just shared on the left. Those are SDG 3 and the sub-goals. And on the right, SDG 3 and some of the critical other SDGs that are very important. So related to poverty, SDG 1, the social protective systems, related to cities, 11.2. There are many more from cities that are related to health. It disappoints me that only 11.2 here. SDG 11 is my second favorite SDG. And you can see adaptation to climate change hazards, reduction of all kinds of violence, and so forth. So this is the beginning, an early SDG look, a 360 look, but we're going to do a lot more with the SDG 360 thinking and with the app. So the 5 ways, what are they? Well, the first thing that I observed, and that, with others, I will say, is that sometimes we can feel really judgmental when people don't care about our, global programs for the world. Why don't they? Well, humans are kind of designed to care about what's near them and what they're currently struggling with. So we really need to show whatever community we're working with that this illustrate what the SDG and the work there with local examples to establish its relevance, urgency, and that there can be consensus developed related to that SDG. So localizing with narrative and image and story so that it is about you. This is about you. And then that world will get larger like we saw and connect you to the world. The second thing that we can do, and I'll show you some examples, is taking existing plans and crosswalking with them with the SDGs. It is very easy to say to your, health division or to your mayor, oh, you don't even know what the SDGs are, or you're not even doing anything with the SDGs. That is not a great way to get started. A better way is to take whatever plans they are and do an asset-based approach where you can really identify what they're doing and then how they can build from there. And that's what this crosswalk really does. It takes people from where they are and have a vision of where they can go. And that can work with any kind of plans, private sector, public sector, health sector, and so on. The third thing is voluntary local reporting can be very powerful. As I was mentioning, a lot of this work and a lot of the data are national level, and it doesn't help us deal with disparities and differences in regions. So by cities, important cities like New York City started this, voluntarily reporting how they're doing, it creates norms of accountability for governance, that these are things we talk about, and these are things we're accountable to citizenships for. The fourth way is kind of this 360 analysis. It's sort of a systems science approach that's informed by implementation science and other things to really look at where can you find tensions and synergies with whatever you're working on and all the SDGs so that you can optimize and identify trade-offs and make the best plans you can. And then fifth, and most importantly, I put it fifth because it's easier to talk about after the others are laid out, is there are some strategies that can help you center equity inclusion. And those need to be used. And I'll give some examples for that. And this comes from a recent article called 360 Thinking in Local Government, Advancing Sustainability, Economic Prosperity, and Equity. It's really the local government application for various reasons, but the application to health, I think, is more immediate. And in fact, I've done more work in that area. It's just that it made sense to do this in the governance realm. So just a quick reminder of what sustainability does mean, has meant, and can mean. Originally, when we talked about sustainability in '87, it was really sustainable development was development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of people to meet future needs. And that amazed us at the time. We were all very excited about this project. However, now you look at it and you think it's a low bar. I mean, it's like you're saying to young people, everyone under 15, I'm going to have a great life and I'm not going to do anything that compromises your ability. I'm thinking what I want to say to those young people is I'm going to do everything I can so that you can thrive. So in fact, this is a little more, it's more neutral than I would want to be at this time. But it was groundbreaking and eye-opening, and this movement kind of merged with the global health movement in the way I see it to create this notion of sustainability that really is a three-legged stool or a three-pillar approach And so over time, and really, you know, after that initial definition, when we thought about sustainability as being mostly about the environment and resources, sustainability has come to be understood as this multidimensional concept with interactions and intersections among three pillars that shape the human experience. And those three pillars are the environment, social equity, and prosperity or economics. Those are the three things that really can shape the human experience. And here you have another, whoops, no, sorry. Why is it going the wrong way? One moment. Getting a little preview. Okay, here are the three pillars. You can take some more time to look at this at another time, but you have the environment and the social and the economic. A lot of times when you talk in your communities with leaders in government about sustainability or leaders in the private sector, they're going to think that you mean environmental sustainability. But this sustainable development is really in this middle area, the sweet spot that you are finding, you know, optimizing social equity, environment, and economic development. So that's kind of a nice graphic to keep in mind. Okay, so telling local stories, I kind of told you a little bit about what it is. This is, you know, a great way for youth to get involved, for communities to get involved, and it's really a mindset of taking an SDG and using it to sort of almost tag or label work that you're doing. So, oh, sorry, my little arrows are not doing what I want them to do. Okay, here's an example from Occidental College, some students who are looking at decarbonization, and they're linking that to 3 different SDGs, you know, decent work, sustainable communities, and climate action. So suddenly you have a broader sense of what this effort can mean for the community. Sorry. Okay, here is another example of some work from students at UW-Madison where they worked to improve the access to the food pantry. These are some of my students from the School of Human Ecology, and they created a digital way for people to get access to food after hours. And then there it is tagged with SDG 2. And here, you know, sometimes people in the US particularly can think the SDGs are about other places, and clearly it's not. And here's an example from Flint, Michigan. The crosswalking of the city plans is a second thing. And the first one, the strategy is built into the app that you'll be using, because in the long run, the app is going to invite you to upload photos and images so that the visualizations that you make have photos built in that localize. And so that is how that's being carried through into the app work that we're doing. In terms of the city plans, the app allows you to do this crosswalk in a very efficient way. And basically what you're doing is you're taking whatever plan you have and looking at its core components, and then you can link them to the SDGs. So here's an example from New York City and their city plan. And they've taken each of their core components of the four strategies for their one NYC vision, and they've showed what SDGs they link to. Here's an example from Hawaii doing the same thing. Hawaii has an Aloha challenge, a statewide challenge, and a state planning act. And they did this very careful crosswalking so they can say, what are we doing and what can we be doing? So suddenly you have a US governmental entity being in dialogue with the SDGs. And that means that they can talk to other states and you know, to decentralized units like cities and regions within their state as well. Here is our city. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and here's our city plan, and it has these 7 components. And so some of our students did a crosswalk analysis of that, and you can see we've got a lot of progress on the SDGs and a lot more that we could be doing. So it's a visual that says an awful lot. I'm going to look, and then here is, before I look in the chat, because I see there are some comments there, here's an example of a number of climate action plans were looked at collectively, and looking at how they related to different SDG targets. So this is kind of another, more creative crosswalk approach. Here we have the voluntary reporting that I talked about. And if you're from any of these cities, you can look at what they're doing. These are some cities in the US on the left. And then there are some international organizations. ICLEI and the UCLG group are both can be a resource for global work. And the same Sustainable Development Solutions Network is working, again, all over the world at the city level and reporting and creating data for those reports. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about this rapid analysis, but I'm gonna take a quick look at the chat. These are older comments. Great, okay. Great, okay. It looks like we're in sync still. And so this rapid analysis will go into detail more in the app, but it has kind of a stepwise process. That one challenge to using the SDGs is it's overwhelming, and a lot of times people, even the authors of the SDGs, will be like, yeah, we made it too complicated. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, if things are complicated, we have to have a complicated framework to respond to them, but we just have to know how to make it clear. So, I kind of like to say, well, there are 17 SDGs. You may think it's too many, but most 2-year-olds can say 17 words, and if you want to take your friends on a picnic, if you're only going to bring 17 things, you might have to be like choosing between mustard and ketchup or salt and pepper. It's not that many. It's just that you have to learn how to think with this tool, and with the right approach and with visualizations, we can do this balancing act a little better. And we kind of have to, because if you don't do it, you are going to miss things and have the unintended harm. So simple solutions really never are. So here's a really, really nice example of an SDG 360 analysis related to health. And as you can see, you have urban health in the middle, and then this analysis done by Ramirez Rubio and colleagues is looking at a health and all policy approach and really mapping all of the SDGs that are related to this urban health there. And life on land is not connected. You could argue that it could be, because we have a lot of living things in our communities, but sometimes we think of cities and urban spaces as just being built, and that's not really the case. But you can see that they've distinguished directly related things from dotted lines being indirectly related. And it helps you to think about who you might want to talk to, what other sectors you might want to be connecting with to holistically realize human health, instead of it assuming that it's only going to be the health centers and clinics. That's part of it, but really to address road traffic injuries or drug and alcohol abuse, you need to be engaging a lot of sectors. And so that there you have it. And kind of the idea is to identify co-benefits and synergies, to sort of error proof or identify tensions there where, when you do, like, yes, we provide plastic gloves and masks for everybody, but then what do we do with the solid waste that comes out of that, for example? That's a common one that gets worked on in health. And then, when you have trade-offs related to equity, rather than either be blind to them or not see them or not perceive them or ignoring them, you can be explicit about them and say, how can we redesign so this isn't here? Or how can we plan compensatory action so this really is fair for everybody in terms of benefits? Here's another really nice one that is looking at climate change and the way it links to the other SDGs. And again, someone else found another way to make a graphic out of these interconnections, but you have climate change being linked to health, clean water, decent work, clean energy, a really big one. And you can just see that climate action really needs this whole of society approach to be effective as well. Here's one on cities and communities that was done by UN Habitat that does a similar kind of thing. And here, I like this. My students designed this. I call it the pinwheel, because you don't have to be able to draw perfect circles to do this. If you're working on a flip chart or with sticky with Post-it notes, you can kind of map this and then come up with a nice idea. And you'll see in the app that we've developed, we have a legend, and it came from the way these students made a legend to the left. So that's kind of the fourth strategy, and that we'll dig in, and you'll be getting the app in a few minutes, and you'll be playing with the app to do that wheel analysis. In terms of equity and inclusion, a couple of the SDGs address equity. SDG 10 and SDG 5 both address equity. However, there are some limitations to things they do and don't talk about, and I have found that I wanted to use those and complement those with some other tools, and I'm going to show you those. So here's SDG 10, and again, when you go through your health challenge, you'll be given a prompt to think about each of these. How does what you're working on impact income equality? If you're talking about a health condition where there's a lot of loss of days at work, that's going to be coming into it. How does it relate perhaps to migration? How does it relate to different other kinds of transaction costs? There's a bunch of equity factors here to look at. And the same with the gender equity. We have discrimination, we have violence, we have, obviously reproductive health and genital mutilation are, health related. But you also have things like ensuring full participation in decision-making that you might decide that is part of your health strategy related to reproductive health, or, equal access for women to pain relief, and some of the areas where there is gender or racial and gender interactions around equity. Promotion and empowerment of women through technology is another great one. Are the data systems that we're using for health having unintentional biases that impact people of different, identities in relation to equity? So you can see how the SDGs form sort of a prompt to help you think. The other framework that I like to do relates to the work of a colleague who did some training at UW-Madison, Sonyali Sanjita Balaji, and she talks about practices and ways of having conversations about health that move us toward equity, and some of them that move us away, and actually there's some kind of text problem here, but the things that we do want to move that help us move toward equity are inviting people to analyze their own problems, acknowledging where we've been complicit in a challenge. That is, that's not easy to do, especially if you're in the business of helping as a health worker. One that I like that I'll highlight here is when you're doing your work, to include ways of relating, ways of healing, structural setups that follow the cultural worldviews of the communities you're working with. Sometimes we come in and we think we're going to celebrate or structure ourselves in ways that we know from places we're from, and it can be really empowering and revelatory and kind of joyful, to do it in new ways. And I think that sometimes we forget about this. Some of the things that really perpetuate inequity, beware the simple solution. This is one that I am guilty of. Sometimes things seem very simple, but you've got to look at why does this inequity exist? If you're ever talking about inequities, but without reminding people about the historical causes, or making sure you do the work to learn what the actual historical causes are, because you might be wrong and we're all have these partial understandings, that's a really important part of the work. So remembering the history and being suspicious about simplicity, and allowing multiple points of view, embracing and seeking multiple points of view are really important. You can dig in more. And this is the model, the critical theory model that she used that I like so much, and you can dig in and read the article. I just wanted to have it here as a reference. We're not going to go into that now, but very relevant for our work, community work everywhere. So now we are going to try to define a priority health challenge that will be what you work with when you go into this app. And it's really very simple, but I wanted you to do it outside of the app because struggling with an app and trying to do wordsmithing at the same time doesn't work as well. So an aim statement is just a concise statement of what you want to achieve in terms of positive change in a complex system. And it functions like a compass for your work. So it really matters, you know, to getting this right. And it should let you know what you're changing, roughly, you know, what kind of measure you're using and how much change you think you want, and localizing it to who you're working with. So I have I have something fun. I have sort of a Mad Lib that you can use. So you can take the text out of here. I'll put that text in the chat. I'm going to go away from the full screen, and I'll grab this and put it in the chat for you. And then you can take it and edit it for your own aim statement. But here you have and then, you know, what place are we talking about? Whether it's an organization or a place in, you know, Madison, Wisconsin, we aim to improve health among who? Oh, I'm going to say among, you know, women who are 63, that'll be me, by reducing or increasing, depending on if you're seeking a positive health state or trying to address a negative health state. So let's say increasing, you know, a positive affect, or, you know, increasing, I'm trying to think of a good one that's easy to measure. Increasing maybe healthy BMI, right, for life, by at least whatever percent. And at the same time, we want to achieve some SDG co-benefits and avoid unintended harms. And this 360 tool is going to help us with that last part, because you're going to be identifying some co-benefits and ways that the health challenge you're facing relates to the other SDGs. And, you know, I recommend that you don't choose a procedural challenge related to compliance with protocol, but rather an overall condition or disease, something that is on your desk now that you're trying to work on, whether it's antimicrobial infection or a mental health condition or reproductive health issues or something related to COVID. And then the second part that really is going to be nice for you is we anticipate making the change through, you know, what kind of solution? Is it going to be education? Is it going to be training? You know, just give a sense, right? And what sectors would be involved and what disciplines would be involved. So I'm going to show you an example. So here we have one example related to schistosomiasis in the Senegal River Basin. We aim to improve population health among the rural poor, especially children, by reducing the rate of schistosomiasis by at least 50%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding harms related to biodiversity, food security, and sustainable livelihoods, right? We anticipate making this change through reintroduction of native prawn species as a complement to drug therapy. So they have this idea of doing something in the environment and doing something in healthcare. And we're going to work through the health and agriculture sectors. There's 2 sectors involved, and we're going to use skills from medicine, veterinary medicine, and aquaculture. So you can see how they've just simply answered that Mad Lib. And so what we're going to do now is you're going to take a little time to think. So take a deep breath, think about something that's on your desk. You're feeling guilty maybe that you should be getting some other thing done right now. So maybe take that very thing, and I'm going to put the text in the chat for you to edit so that you kind of have a problem statement. And we're going to take 5 minutes to do that. We'll all be on the screen. So if anyone has a question, you can just unmute and ask me or put it in the chat. And then we'll go to the app together once we have crafted these kind of statements that you want to work on. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to get that text for you. Whoops. Into the chat. And you'll have to kind of copy this. You can copy it anywhere and edit it. And then later you'll take what you wrote and you'll put it into the app. And in fact, if we can even share a couple here, but let's take 5 minutes or so and feel free to unmute and ask me a question. I'll be looking at the chat and listening.
It's not in the chat yet.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
If you have completed and you have your statement, can you just kind of put a little heart or give me some kind of sign? I'm presuming we need a few more minutes, but I'd just like to get a sense of how people are doing. Why don't we do this? Why don't you post your statements in the chat when you have them? Because other people can get inspired and get a sense of how it's done. And then when I see about 10 there, then we'll go on to the next step of turning to the app. And there's plenty of time, so don't feel rushed. And also you can comment if you want. Okay, we've got. So we've got, in the state of Wisconsin, we aim to improve health among people at risk of COVID by reducing the rate of infection by at least 10%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding unintended harms. We anticipate making this change through creating effective wastewater monitoring tools, working through public sector, using skills and knowledge for data analysis. Great. So that's a great one because it already gets us out of the mindset of thinking just about what healthcare providers are doing with education and water monitoring to target things and so forth, so that that you could do a little wordsmithing because the Mad Lib that I gave has extra words, and so you would delete reducing because you're trying to reduce infection, so you would take out the word increasing and go forward. Does anybody else have one?
I do. I'm just about to finish.
Good, thanks. There's no hurry. Everybody take a breath. We're doing real work now, so it can take time. It's like if you were in class. This isn't a rapid fire webinar. This is a workshop. Okay, so we have another one here. In Rio Grande do Sul, the southernmost Brazilian state, we aim to improve health among people more exposed to arboviral diseases, especially those living in places without sanitary conditions like sewage and running water, by reducing the rate of dengue and chikungunya cases by at least 50%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding unintended harms. We anticipate making this change through awareness of combating the vector and not storing water, working through education, environmental health surveillance involving state departments, universities, and the exposed community, using skills and knowledge from previous outbreaks, epidemiology, One Health, molecular biology, and microbiology. Yeah, that's really great. And you can see how that aim statement is already reaching toward the SDGs. Now, I believe it's Anna who wrote this, may already have enough of like a One Health and interconnected sensibility that the SDG analysis might not lead to as much novelty as one who's already been in one sector. But I'm hoping that even for an expert like you, the analysis finds surprises, because in some ways that's how we know if it works, if it helps experts as well as generalists in different ways. And one of the things some of the scientists who've worked with us have said, and the dengue vaccine that we have now, some of the scientists have said that this approach helps them think about identifying broader impacts when they're trying to do, NIH grants or NSF grants, because it just leads naturally to it, and then you have the framework. So great. Does anybody else have some more coming up? Don't be embarrassed to post. In fact, I should have let Anna read it. I'll do that next time. We'll read at least two more, and then we'll go on to the app. I think someone just posted one. Okay, thank you, Femi. What's HTF stand for? Would you like to read that for us?
Event Trust Foundation.
Okay, great.
It's an organization. Yeah.
Can you read your statement?
Sure. In Event Trust Foundation, we aim to improve health among underserved populations in conflict areas by reducing the rate of mental health illnesses by at least 30%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding unintended harms. We anticipate making this change through upskilling the community health workers, working through the Ministry of Training, using skills and knowledge from capacity building and gender programming.
So this is great. Thank you. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this prompts for you here, because one of the connections that you may have already made, but I know that the SDGs will prompt, is SDG 11 suggests that every person should live within, I think, 1 kilometer of a park or a public green space, and so in these conflict areas, are people having access to green spaces where they can be and be safe? And what kind of impact does that have on mental health? That's a line that would come out as either a dotted or a direct line. Among the things that might be worked on is kind of having access to nature for folks. I'm just thinking of one thing among the many that might come through as you do this SDG 360 analysis. Shall we have one or two more before we go to the app? We have Carmel. Would you like to read it, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
We aim to improve health among refugees by reducing the rate of non-communicable diseases by at least 20%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding unintended harms. We anticipate making this change through a mobile clinic, working through primary health centers and municipalities, using skills and knowledge from physicians, nurses, and community health workers.
Great. So this is another really interesting one, and it is, I mean, there are many non-communicable diseases, mental health being among them. And so it'll be very interesting to see how you, again, how you end up linking with natural spaces and some of the social things. And, you know, it does get you out of the clinic a little bit. And so I think when we think about that social ecological model that I showed at the beginning, that we have, you know, the family, the community, services, and then larger social benefits, you might be able to think about companion strategies that make, you know, take the pressure off the healthcare system having to be the ones to respond to everything. So things like transportation systems that facilitate exercise, or, you know, other kinds of things, or even making sure that transportation systems are, you know, nice and clean, so that the exposure to exhausts and things like that that can be lead to non-communicable illnesses and air quality kinds of issues are reduced. So there's a lot of systemic things that might come out of this analysis. Does anybody want to have one more before we go to the app? I'm holding the app.
I have one. It might not be perfect though.
Being imperfect is a beautiful thing. I look forward to you posting it. Here we go. Jacqueline. In a hospital in Ghana, we aim to improve health among Ghanaians by reducing the rate of maternal mortality by at least 5%, while at the same time achieving SDG co-benefits and avoiding unintended harms. We anticipate making this change through improving communication among the multidisciplinary teams, working through the Ghana Health Services and Ministry of Health, using skills and knowledge from interprofessional education, collaborative competencies, and healthcare workers. Yeah, so that's a great one. And it's really going to be interesting to see what kind of breakthroughs happen when you think about, you know, really a multi-sector effort. Again, so that you can do the best practices in health, but what can happen in the education system? What might happen even in the private sector? You know, what might happen in city spaces and so on. So great. Okay, so I think we are ready to go to the app, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the app. I'm going to share my screen briefly, but before I do that, I'm going to try to put the link to. Nope, I didn't do it. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask Dalal to put the link in the chat while I do this share. So don't worry, it'll be coming soon. Okay. Can everybody see this workshop coming soon, this app coming soon screen? Looks like you can.
Yes.
Great. So the status of the app is you're going to sign in today, and then you will be registered. And between having the email and having access to you on the app, as soon as it's fully functional, you'll be the first to be able to use it. So today you can play with it. You can see the visualizations a little bit. Some of you, if you're on Chrome, may be able to download images. If you're on Safari, the download, you know, some of those details we're still working on, but you're going to be able to get a sense of what it can do in the long run, and the logic of the SDG 360 thinking as well. So here you have, here's what it's all about. We have, here you have on the actual app, when you float over these numbers, it tells you what the SDG is. And this app will allow you to learn about the SDGs, what they are, what are the targets, to use the matrix analysis if you have a plan going like I showed you, and also to use this 360 analysis and make some visualizations. And again, it's based on that article. And here you have, this is the development on this is led by the UW-Madison American Family Insurance Data Science Institute, and the collaborators have been the School of Human Ecology and our university Alliance program as well. So we're going to take a little time to think now, but actually this is the part where I have to show my proficiency in the app. I'm going to go on the app and do a little playing around with you while you're signing in so you can kind of see a little bit. Wait a minute, what am I seeing here? Okay. Okay, we have some new messages, so I'm going to look at the new messages. People are saying yes. Here you have a link in the chat. So click on that link and you'll be able to log in to the app. If you look over to the right, it'll give you the option of logging in. One really important detail is it is going to ask you for a password. Do not forget your password, because it won't let you sign in again with a new password. So make sure you make a note, your email and password, and maybe you can, kind of give me, if you all know how to raise your hand here in the reaction button, you can give me any reaction at all. Maybe raise your hand or clap. The link is working. Thank you, Ghulam, Dr. Mustafa. While you're doing, I'm going to just give you a minute to do that. And when it looks like a critical mass, people are giving thumbs up, raising their hand. When it looks like most of you have gotten on, I will give you a little demo, and then we'll have some time to think with the app. It's pretty quick. It just asks you your name, email, and affiliation. If you're having any trouble whatsoever, please don't worry about asking, and we can go through it. I can help you through it. Yeah, sign up, because then Carmel, you'll be the first to know when it's fully operational, and you won't be able to play with it as easily if you don't sign up. You won't be able to see your visualization. Great, we've got 2 people giving me thumbs up. It's all happening now.
Oh, I can't seem to find a way to get on here.
Okay. What happens when you click on the link?
It opens up. It's opening up an Edge. Maybe that's the problem.
Sorry, Lori, it's because you said log in rather than sign up. So maybe the others are logging in.
Yeah,
but they
that's
have to
right.
sign up. That's why.
Yeah, because if you're not
I managed
already
to do
signed
it.
up, it won't let you log in.
Exactly.
Okay, well then how do I sign up? Because I just clicked on the link, which is what you said.
Yeah, when you click on the link, then you'll see the top bar on the very far right. It'll say sign up.
There's sign up, and next to it there's log in. So you'd have to go into sign up.
I'm not seeing anything there that says that.
Okay. What happens when you scroll to the top? Do you see my profile?
When I scroll to the top, it just says SDG 360 thinking, and just below that is the wheel. That's it.
Okay. If you look at SDG 360 thinking and follow over to the right, there
Yeah.
should be a bunch of menus there.
Okay, and so you're asking me to sign up?
Yes, sign up would be the one.
Okay.
And if you don't have that option, it might be a computer glitch. It's not impossible, but sign up will be the right one.
Okay. Okay, I think I can manage it here, hopefully.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Well, I'm going to
that's-
wait another minute or two, and then I'm going to do the demo.
Sign up.
I'm guessing, has anybody else had, maybe give me a sign if you have not signed up.
Hello, Laurie.
It worked. Yes, who's Charles?
So, yes, I've just signed up. Any other thing you wanted me to do?
And now I'm going to do a demo. So all you have to do is be ready. I'm going to do a little demo to show you all, and then you're going to have some time to work on analyzing the problem statement that you made. But I'm going to show you how you go about putting it in. So you're going to get a little more instruction. It's intuitive, but I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. So now I've got my screen shared again. And you'll all bear with me because I'm a little better at teaching global health than teaching about apps. Let me see. You are screen sharing, but it's not where I want to go to the full screen. Can you see this now? What are you all seeing? Are you seeing my wheel analysis?
Wheel analysis, yeah.
Right, okay. I just need to make you smaller so that I can see it. I have all of your names here, which is nice. Okay, so what happens here is I'm going to go to my analyses because I already have some in there. And I'm going to start a new one. Okay, so I clicked on Get Started. If you click on Get Started, you'll see this page, and it's going to remind you that SDG 360 thinking is both a process and a mindset that allows you to bring holistic framing and clear focus to all of your efforts to enhance well-being and sustainability in the public sector, the private sector, or the civil society sector. Here, we're all working on health services. Now, you might, somebody, if you were just coming at this, or if you shared it with a friend, they might say, well, how do I know whether I use a wheel analysis or a crosswalk? And there's a simple sentence that explains it. Start with the crosswalk if you have an existing plan or policy and you want to review that to develop it in line with the SDGs. Maybe you're an organizational leader or a planner or a clinic director. The crosswalk is probably going to be what you would want to use, or if you have some kind of implementation plan. But most of us are going to be using the wheel analysis. And the wheel analysis you use if you want to understand and address a complex challenge as a researcher, a practitioner, a problem solver, or an innovator. So that's for me. So I'm going to click here on, and both of these strategies are going to help you get insight, think about how to take action, and develop some customized visualizations. And I'm going to show you some visualizations later. But right now I'm going to click on New Wheel Analysis. Now it's giving me, I think somebody has an orange crayon going, but anyway, that's nice, whoever is adding that to the picture. So for challenge type, it gives me a menu here, and I'm going to click on, maybe I want to do something related to transportation, okay? And so do you see how I clicked on that and it filled out transportation? Most of you will be public health. It might be something different, might be water quality or something, but most of you are mentioning public health. It remembers my organization because when you logged in, you had to fill that out. And then it tells me I'm doing the wheel. Now here, it's going to let me edit a challenge statement. I want you to take the statement that you wrote and put it in here. You've already done this step. It's just a matter of copying the text there. And then also you can choose some keywords. So this is just like when you're doing a science article or something, having some keywords, because we're imagining that as this builds over time, people will be sharing their success stories and lessons, and you'll be able to find similar things by keyword. So once you've put the challenge and the keyword in there, I'm going to put something simpler. For challenge, I'm going to say bicycle access to UW-Madison from all parts of the community. So I'm going to say recreational spaces. So I have this vision that everybody uses UW as its playground. We have a museum, we have a climbing wall, we have a lake, and people can feel, I'm going to say easy access, not just bicycle access, because some people can't bike and they really want to be able to get there. That's what I want to see happen. Now I'm pressing, I didn't make it as long as yours because I didn't want you to waste time, but ideally I'd follow that formula, right? Then for next, the keywords. So I'm going to say buses, bikes, walkability. Oh, I don't know why that happened. Now when I press next, Now it's going to get a little bit interesting, because the first question it's asking me to do, part of the design here is not to have people feel overwhelmed by the 169 indicators. So the first thing it's asking me to do is to select which is the primary SDG that's most relevant for me. For most of you, it is going to be number 3, good health and well-being. But because of how health is codified, you may be surprised that a lot of things that matter for you are in the other SDGs. For me, for this one, I happen to know that transportation is number 11.2, so I'm going to start there. So 11 is my main SDG. Integrated city planning is related to this. Reducing access to safe, inclusive, accessible spaces and public spaces is what I'm thinking about with this UW angle. And I'm gonna leave it at that because I'm really focusing on the transportation. So I have finished step 1. I've picked my primary SDG and I have selected the sub-targets. Now I'm going to press next because it's going to take me to a next step. Now they want me to select 1 or 2 secondary SDGs and the most relevant sub-targets, right? So I think for me, I'm pretty sure that health is going to be one of them, good health and well-being. But interestingly, the way this is written, the kind of positive health that I'm thinking about isn't here in the SDGs. It's not saying, you know, I don't know where the, you know, there's an impact on non-communicable disease. I wanted people to have sort of joy, and the mental health is lumped in with non-communicable disease here. So I'm gonna see if there's any others. Reduced inequalities might be helpful. Let me take a look. This is social inclusion for all, so that's a good one. And then let me look at what this says, strong institutions. Because UW is an institution. I think what I'm going to do is go to number 4 because UW is an education institution. So access to quality higher education, facilities that are inclusive and safe, and the access is part of that. Making sure people have the knowledge for global development could be an indirect one. So let's say I've done it, you know. Now, another thing that it's going to ask me to do for the next step, this is the 3rd step, is a sweep of the remaining SDGs to see if there's any sub-targets that you want to look at. And sometimes you immediately know you don't want to look at them. I'm actually thinking affordable and clean energy. There is a, you know, there's a climate action aspect to this, right? But not as they're written here. So maybe I do want it to be under energy. Energy efficiency would be, you know, the way we use things. So let's say that's it. I've done my sweep. Now it's asking me to review the list I have and really do some thinking about what I would add. And sometimes you'll have quite a lot. Remember that urban health one, how many it had? So according to this approach, we would be encouraging them to get that list to 10 to 25 targets, to be manageable, but still support complexity, right? And then I would press download image. And you see this legend here. It's a little off the way it's representing. There we go. So on the right, it's giving me an education. It's giving me the legend. And there is the image. I'm hoping, there we go. So now it's gone back to the image, but if you press the download image, it'll show you the legend. And in the long run, those legends will be part of the graphics that it produces. I'm going to try one more time to download the image. And while you're working, I'm going to see if I can get that image to come out. So now I am going to stop sharing. And I just want to give you a few examples before I turn you over to the shared work. I'm going to show you a few of how these can come out, right? So we have had students, like people like Emma, who's here on the call, and others working on this for a while. And our students have been, more than 3,000 UW-Madison students have learned about the SDGs. And here's an example of somebody who did a visualization. Kaylin Ostrowski from our Global Health Institute and our Global Health student, Noah Cook. This was done as part of a class project in my class. Whoops. And she was looking at what are all the ways that hemp can be leveraged for health and well-being. So she had number 3, number 9, climate action, number 15, and you can see she has the linkages, and they also have a nice legend that goes with this that says what all of those are. Here's what some of my students did who were working with the mayor of Maplewood, Missouri. They did a project for this mayor. And one of the things the app will do in the long run, it will ask you to load up a picture that is relevant. And so you can see that they got the relevant targets there, and they have an image of the city, and they have their aim statement there. So there's an awful lot in one graphic. What we'll be doing in the long run will be a little bit more elegantly designed than this, but this is really pretty nice in terms of being able to communicate a lot. Here's another one, and this was done with the app. So you see how here in Fitchburg, they were doing transportation. They wanted to foster inclusivity, create opportunities. They wanted it to be equitable and local. Whoops. I don't know why that's happening. And they have a picture of, anybody from Fitchburg would recognize their place, and they have the sub-targets there. Here's another, students got really creative and did their own thing. I think it's very cool. We don't have a graphic in the app that supports that, but they took the 3 themes of the strategic plan and linked it with these different kinds of lines to all of the SDGs. And then here's another one that really followed the letter of the methodology, which is, you create this wheel. You can see how just what you were doing would create this wheel with the legend. And this was related to people who are homeless and creating safe and integrated housing for folks. And look at how many SDGs they linked it to. And then we asked them to analyze it by saying, what are the co-benefits that would happen if you provide this housing? And they said, well, it's going to reduce inequalities. It's going to help with health. It's going to help with ending poverty. There's so many synergies. Housing is a key nexus that we forget about. In fact, I think housing should be an SDG, but that's a whole nother story. And then they thought about, what harms do we want to avoid? And they said, well, we want to avoid policies that aren't gender sensitive or that would inadvertently harm people with disabilities or communities that were vulnerable for other reasons. And so then they also identified some trade-offs that, we might have tensions here. If we create a system that is sort of easier for people with knowledge to take advantage of, it could reduce inequity. So we have to make sure we really reach out to get the message to people. And so you can see how with a little imagining, with a little more art and with a legend on the side, you could create a graphic. You saw how quick it was for me to fill out mine. If you had a team working really really thoroughly, in an hour or two, they could create a really nice graphic that said an awful lot about what is this challenge, what do we want to accomplish, and how does it relate to the other SDGs. So what I want you to do now is, I stopped sharing. I want you to play for a little bit with the SDGs. Okay, somebody said previous slide, what's it talking about? So we'll go back and figure out what that question was. But I want you to play with this, and we're going to take about 20 minutes, and then at around 2 o'clock or 2:10, we can start sharing work that you've done using the share screen approach, because probably the legend may work on your computer. It doesn't work on mine because of the configuration, but we can see the wheels and we can start imagining how yours would look like the others once the app is complete. So someone had a question for me, Lydia. Which slide were you when you said what is it talking about? Did you mean the one about hemp? Do you want to describe the slide or tell me about it? I'm going to ask you to unmute because you might be. Hi, Linda. I see you've joined. Okay, well, let's all go and try on our app, and I will be here. And if Lydia, if you come back and you want to ask me that question, we can find the slide and make sure we answer your question. We can also make sure we do that when we come back. But let's take 15 minutes or so. I think I'm gonna find some nice music for you to listen to while you work. And then I'm hoping that 4 or 5 of you will share your screen, or more if we have time. You can say hello and tell folks what you do, a little bit about your work, and you know, show us your visualization and let us know if you've got any insight from going through the app in this way. Oh, thank you, Lydia. Did you have a question?
Okay, I was talking about the slide before. There's a slide before the last slide that was saying global action, but the slide before that one, maybe the third slide before the last. I don't know how to describe it.
Did it have the SDG wheel with some photos on it?
Yes, yes.
Well, the one that had a big picture.
I think it had some branches, like, I don't know, like a map, like talking, I don't know, something like that. It didn't have a picture.
Okay. It didn't have a picture. Oh, I know what it had a plant in the middle.
Something like branches, talking about, I don't know, it was talking about different
I'm going to share the
things.
screen. I hope it doesn't bother anyone else. We'll find it because I'm curious about your question, and I really appreciate you coming back and letting me know what, is it this one? This one?
No.
This one?
No.
This one?
Yes, yes.
Oh, this one is, so the students did their own thing, and I'll tell you what they did. I almost didn't include this because it's a little confusing, but you know how we have the wheel analysis and then we have the matrix analysis for when someone has a plan? They were doing the other one, not the wheel, but they had the strategic plan for this city called Tigard, Oregon. And Tigard, Oregon city plan had three things. Their 3 themes were they wanted to have an excellent customer experience, meaning, you know, they're citizens who came in for help. They wanted to have an accessible pedestrian network, and they wanted to have, you know, development and resources to support their vision. And so what the students did by reading all the details underneath that was they drew lines to show which SDGs it was connected to. So the orange ones, the things that are related to this customer experience, had dotted lines connected to 3 things. The developing the vision, they connected it to others, and that was how they showed the interconnections between the SDGs and the themes with all of this sort of circuitry, if you will. So they had the metaphor of an electrical circuit instead of, you know, these grids that we were using.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. So I have been listening to this really nice Uruguayan guitar, and I used it for the background for a video I did. So I am going to have you listen to that. It may start with an ad. I'm going to try to avoid it starting with an ad, and it will be in the background.
And prefer there to be no scandal from men I don't approve of.
But you don't approve of anyone.
Sorry, I
Mr.
can't.
Fortune is
Apparently I
mindful.
can't.
You're making a terrible mistake.
Six more seconds of this nonsense and then you'll. Can you let me know if you can hear the sound? Oh, great. Thanks, Dr. Mustafa.
Que se iba a imaginar este antiquísimo.
We'll take about 5 more minutes because can you give me an indication through your reactions if you think that's enough time? Maybe a thumbs up, 5 more minutes, or put it in the chat if you think you want 10 more minutes, or give me some sense. How's it going? You could turn on your mic and let me know how it's going. Oh, great. Okay, great. So some people are getting, so Anna, thank you. That I think based on that, I'm going to suggest that we take, Judy's also giving a thumbs up. So why don't we take about 3 more minutes and we'll let a few people share. And mainly will be, I have this set for everybody. Let me just make sure multiple people can share. So Anna, why don't you prepare to share? And Judy, why don't you prepare to share as 1 and 2? And then other people can volunteer as they're done.
Sure. So as I wrote there, I did 2 wheels.
Great.
One with the challenge that I mentioned before about the dengue, and the other one about respiratory viral infection. So let me see here. I'm going to share my desktop and open my wheel.
Oh, good. It worked. Yeah.
So this is one of them, and the other one. And this is the other one.
Great.
So considering that dengue as an arboviral disease has a lot to do with environmental factors like, sewage and water storage, especially for people that do not have running water or sewage system. It ended up, I cannot increase. Oh yeah, I can. I ended up choosing a lot of SDGs here besides good health and well-being, because then educating people, like, letting them be aware of the risks of increasing the population of the mosquito by storing water, and also the use of nets, and also what do you call that, mosquito repellents. So that has to do with education. Clean water and sanitation is another SDG that is related to arboviral disease. Industry, innovation, infrastructure for the development of adequate diagnostic assays and vaccine and sewage and etc. Reduce inequalities, because we know that people that live in the slums, in places with no running water, they're more susceptible of being infected with accumulating water and having the vector, and also end up being bitten by mosquitoes that carry either dengue or chikungunya and even yellow fever. Sustainable cities and communities is also related to that. Responsible consumption and productivity and production. Climate action, we know that climate changes contribute a lot for vector spread and all the change in the ecosystem. Life on land, especially considering the invasive alien species. And I decided to include that because, as I mentioned, the state where I live, Rio Grande do Sul, is the southernmost state in Brazil. So our climate's much colder than the rest of the country. And even though dengue has been an endemic disease in Brazil since the 80s, the first autochthonous case in our state was in 2007. And last year, we had the worst outbreak. We had more than 60,000 cases that year, only 2022. So it was much more than all the accumulated years. And partnership for the goals, because as I also mentioned here in my challenge, it requires a collaboration of the government, science and technology institutions, the community, and also the private sector to develop medication and vaccines.
Yeah.
And here's the wheel.
Yep. Wow.
That's for dengue.
So this is really, you know what I said earlier about how solutions can take like 17 years to be at scale and fully implemented. That's like something that's often quoted in the healthcare quality improvement literature. You can see why when you look at all the sectors that are involved in this really working at scale, because even if you had a complete workforce that knew what to do, and or community members who know what to do, I also have to have access to the materials and the diagnostic. You were really systemic and how you wrote about it. I would like,
and here, of course, I'm being a little bit, I'm not going to say conservative, but
right.
I'm trying to make a summary here, because if you consider, like here in Brazil, most of the people that started to have dengue here in the state were male men that used to travel a lot to other states and come back infected. And they were traveling because of work. And
Right.
the female would stay at home here. So in the beginning, in the first 3 years of the dengue cases here, because they're all imported, they're all male. And now we also have females.
Wow.
And we know that also the difference that if you get infected twice, the second time is worse. So usually in children, it's not as bad as in adults. So there are so many things that have to be considered when choosing each one of the SDGs, even like life underwater, underneath water. If we think about possible predators of mosquitoes, we also need to consider those living underwater and so on
Yeah,
and so forth.
yeah, it's real. Well, this is great. So thank you so much. I want to ask you, because you're already a One Health scientist, I realize. Did this quick analysis allow you to see any things you hadn't thought about before? Or were they mostly things because you're an expert in the field you had already thought about, and it's, is it enabling you to think about it, communicate it? Does it help at all, the tool?
Yeah, for sure. And when you stop and you really read each of them, what do you call it? Because you have
They call them
goals,
targets, which I hate that, but
the
that's what they
targets.
call them.
So
Yeah.
when you look at each target, you realize how that target is part of a specific goal that you didn't even think of.
Right.
Maybe you can, sometimes this has nothing to do with industry. And when you see that there's a target totally related to your challenge inside the industry goal, then you realize how important that is.
Yeah, you have to dig in. The other thing is, and you might already know this because of your area of study, but others may not. The life on land and life in water, they're a little bit misnomers, because, and I come from the area near the Great Lakes in the US, so I'm very sensitive about big freshwater bodies. But really the life underwater is about oceans, and the life on land includes the water in the land. But lakes and the health of lakes are really not directly there, which is just crazy. It sort of comes under clean drinking water, as if that's all that lakes are about. And so as a Great Lakes dweller, I'm ready to revise the SDGs and make sure that the way we think about freshwater systems is represented differently. And then the migration dimension, to what you're saying, it's really hard to figure out how to talk about migration with the SDGs and like healthy, joyful, free migration for people. And here you have people, probably a lot of that is sort of quasi-forced migration and bringing this disease home, just like in the early days of industrialization.
And even tourism, like we had the Zika, really bad Zika outbreak in the Americas in 2015, which started here in Brazil. So, that's another.
Well, thank you. I am going to see. Bye, Carmel. It's not, okay, great. Do you want to share briefly before you go, or is it?
Yes, I could do that. 1 second.
Okay, we would love that. Thank you so much for the extra minutes. And bear in mind that these visualizations will be all neatly on the page later. It's still a little spread out, but we're getting it. So Carmen will be sharing. Here we go.
So I used the example for which I had written the sentence earlier about the refugees and the mobile clinic. I'm not sure I ticked all the boxes, but I could see the, how do I zoom in for you to be able to see? Okay, so this is eventually what I got.
Mm-hmm.
It's very user-friendly. So yeah, I could take these SDGs: no poverty, good health, reduced inequalities, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnerships for the goals.
So I noticed that you have, reduced violence there and the poverty stuff. Were you thinking in particular about injury?
I did think of that, yes. Although in my sentence I mentioned non-communicable diseases, but as you go through the SDGs, you kind of see lots of them that you'd be interested in seeing how they look on that chart. So I got misled a bit.
Yeah.
Probably
I
should
think
narrow
the
down.
SDG 3 is a little bit hard because it makes you lump a lot of conditions together.
Mhm.
And I think when I think of, for example, reduced violence is so related to the injury question, it's less related to a problem like obesity,
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
great.
So what you're trying to say is that we really need to focus on the original sentence and our original aim.
Well, actually, I'm glad you
rather-
asked that question. That is not the case. It's an iterative process. So the whole thing, it helps you think. And so your original thought was what you wrote. And then when you
Mhm.
looked at those, you might say, gee, I do want to focus on,
Mm.
injury or violence, or, oh, I wanted to. So it can be iterative. And then you just revise both until you get where you want. And it's like, oh, our first draft of it's sort of like a good first draft. When you have a good question, like I thought your question was really good, then you think with it and you make it more precise and make it better. So I don't know how you feel about the tool, if it helped you to think, if it gave you any insights. You said it was user friendly, which reassures me because that was
Yeah.
a question I had. But
I'm
what did you think
wondering,
about?
yes, I'm wondering what is the ultimate aim of the tool? Is it to, come out with this graph and have this thought process, or you'll be adding a next step to it, or where are you going with this tool?
So
It would be
the next
interesting.
step would be, once you had the graph, the ultimate aim of the tool is to identify co-benefits. So ways that what you're doing is having, benefits for other goals, and also tensions where maybe you're taking action in one way, but it's causing other problems and equity. So we look for
Okay.
those kinds of aspects of impact and efficiency. And
Mhm.
then you take this kind of analysis into whatever, and I'll be talking about this later, whatever processes you have in place for policy, planning, implementation, or change making. A 360 analysis can feed into that. So some people use design thinking or lean or planning and implementation. But you can take this deeper analysis and then revise your plans and your strategies, and even your sense of what is the intervention that we're going to use, because in some ways you're designing an intervention with this systemic understanding. That's kind of the dream. If it worked really well, that's what it would help you do. So it would lead you to better action that didn't have blind spots about connections that we would want you to have.
Definitely, because we're going SDG by SDG and going them, through them very carefully and ticking all the boxes. That's you're right about this.
Anna, do you have a comment?
Yeah, because if you're considering non-communicable disease or health in general, I think gender equity is also important, especially
yeah,
refugee
definitely.
camps and places like that, because we know that men and women, they have different chronic disease. So, like types of cancer, and some are more susceptible to certain types of chronic disease. Just
That's
a comment.
true. Thank you so much for the comment.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us, Carmel, and have a good evening. I know others might be on.
Yeah, have a good night.
So thanks for the extra time, people.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I am going to copy that link and put it in the chat because someone was asking for it. Maybe it's already there. Okay, patients, we see. Okay. We'll make sure that you get by email the PowerPoint slides in the link, patients, because rather than have you struggle with signing in now, you can enjoy the conversations, and then we'll make sure you get everything. I have CUGH has been really good about like right away giving me the list of all the registrants, so it should work well. Adili, I've just posted the link if you want to get, play around. Does anybody else want to show what they did? Judy, I think you said you were done. But I know you also had iffy connection, so.
I'm done, but I can't find what I put in.
Okay.
Anyway,
If you press that download button again, it might present and then you can just share the screen like that. Does anyone else have something to share? Or are we ready to go to a recap? I think what I'm going to do is go to a little recap, and if you have something you want to share, you can put it in the chat. But I'm also thinking about what's recorded here and available to you, and the idea that some of people are on later time zones. So what I'm going to do now is go back. I have something fun. I have two more fun things, so the fun isn't over yet. I'm going to go back to the Tigard example again and just talk about what in the long term you can expect from this app. And then I have something fun to share. One moment. Okay. So now this should be even more familiar to you. You can see that just after 20 minutes or so of playing, people were able to do rudimentary analyses like this on the left. And on the right, this is the analysis I was mentioning to Carmel, that we're going to then think about, what are the co-benefits? What are the harms that I might want to redesign on? Well, how can I plan for equity here? And you're going to use this, more holistic analysis to improve your plans for implementing change. And that's the idea, is to get the first thing we try to be as good as possible. You're going to iteratively have to improve whatever you do. But the idea is that you can, do some optimizing and making things better and seeing some connections that you didn't see before. In the long run, the app is going to produce a visualization that has this image and a legend on one side and a photo, whatever photos you upload on the other. So you could imagine sharing a lot in one page that you could talk to, the way Anna did, and she improvised because moving things around and everything, it will all be in kind of a landscape view where you won't have to do that. So yeah, so watch for the app. And now I have something fun. I hope it works. People do all kinds of fun things. And I think, did I mention earlier something I mentioned when I was talking about human ecology? It's important to integrate the arts, and it's important to get people communicating about the SDGs and also using the SDGs for this kind of, systematic analysis, clarity, making connections, not missing errors or harms that you might be causing. When I talk to public health people who are designing interventions, sometimes I say, we're so precious about the healthcare interventions we design. When people are making a car, they try to break it. They crash test it to make sure it really works before they sell it to you. And sometimes we have to be a little tougher on the things we design to make sure that they really, really, truly, truly work. So, but this is something fun that a group from Cleveland did about the SDGs. They'd been working with the SDGs for a while. And this is Deepa in the middle of the top row. She's my colleague who has done just some brilliant work on the SDGs leading this. But they had a young person, and this is about localizing, right? So he could have played the video I played, right? That was kind of fun. But he made a rap about Cleveland and about the SDGs. And so I'm going to play that for you as a little bit of, it's a reward for the hard work, and just to remind you about the power of really localizing with story, with music, with arts. So here goes.
Sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals. You guys hear the drums good? Does the music sound good? The beat? Yeah? All right. It looks good on my end. Oh, I'm recording it too over here. Sustainable development goals. Yo. SDG the best. What up, John Guest? I'ma keep it nice and simple, not too complex. My name is X, you don't have to peek the bio. I wanna say shout out to philanthropy, Ohio. Larry McGill reps the SDGs, ambit, full circle, 360 degrees. Keep out in Cleveland with positive energy. Leave no one behind, economic prosperity. How can we use data to measure progress, helping people find work so they're looking for jobs less? Vanessa, Delicious, London Community Foundation from Canada, all about unity. Their journey began in 2018 with SDGs, working with the CFC, active in impact investing spaces, health and well-being with vital conversation. Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. I think there's 17. Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. That's SDGs, that's what it stands for. Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. SDGs, what? Sustainable development goals. St. Peters, the community foundation of Greater Flint, Michigan, helping with education, leadership, scholarship, longstanding programs. Neighborhoods can grow in the street like a rose can. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, slumber, get good sleep, maybe go on vacation because you worked hard for quality education, gender equality, water innovation to make it more clean and help sanitation, affordable energy, economic growth, industry, infrastructure, and more quotes, reduce inequality, sustainable cities, helping playgrounds and parks look pretty, responsible consumption and production, climate action, Mother Nature's not bluffing. Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. Remember Captain Planet? Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. He had a green belt, he was great. Sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals. His boss was Mother Earth. Sustainable development goals. Again, see, this is tough. Life before water, or life on land. Justice and strong institutions for the fam. Partnerships for the gold, strike with intelligence, pure elegance for sustainable development, using new ideas, thought rearrange. Vanessa and the Vital Crew said be the change. Larry showed the slides for the info we're learning. People won't stop believing in the journey. Systems convening, catalyzing, coordinating, partners connecting, and all communicating. For everybody, all the girls and the boys, if you love SDG, please make some noise. And yo, that is the truth. Actually, right here, you can even come off mute. You can wave your hand. You can go hoop, hoop, and whoop, whoop, whatever you want. This is sitting behind. My mic's getting rid of it. Oh my God, this is happening at 5. This is crazy.
I hope you thought that was as fun as I did. We have some great news from Emma Seberg. Emma, do you want to share? Maybe you want to share a little bit about what it's like to be here after you were with the first group of students that helped me when we were just starting out and we didn't even have an app. But Carmencita asked about how to get the tool to insert a picture, and Emma was able to answer her question. If you click on the center of the wheel, there's an option to insert a picture. So that's already there. If someone can do a picture and show us, it would be really, really great to demonstrate that part of the app.
I have a picture in mind if you would want me to do that.
Great. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So,
and is that you, Emma, speaking? Yeah, great.
Yes. So this is the wheel that I made. It's about environmental determinants of health. And if you just click in the middle here, then this option over here shows up and you can just choose an image that you have and enter it there.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better because it's a key thing to this 5 ways to localize. Even though we can be very proud of our wheel with all these numbers, if you line them up, they all look the same. And the customization of image and narrative and careful language, all of those things really matter. And you might even want to put a picture of the team of scientists or leaders that are working on things. Anything to humanize the SDGs is good. So that looks beautiful. Emma, do you want to tell us what your statement was and what you learned in the analysis?
Yeah, so currently I'm working on a project about increasing the awareness of environmental determinants of health, and we're focusing on air pollution and water pollution in Wisconsin. And so we're aiming to increase awareness by increasing the communication and conversations between citizens that are experiencing health effects, medical professionals, because there's often a gap between talking about diseases and their causes. So just increasing that conversation, and then encouraging policy making with the voices being heard of all people, medical professionals, citizens, scientists. We're just encouraging these conversations because pollution is a driver of premature death and illness. So when I was making my wheel, I centered it around good health because that's the end goal. But then I realized that there's a lot that goes into it because we're trying to create conversation. So there was a lot that came from sustainable cities, increasing the voices, so increasing the institutions, and decreasing and eliminating poverty because there's lots of gaps within Wisconsin. I think the wheel was a really good tool for me to really see the entire problem and looking at it more holistically, because it is such a big problem and requires so many conversation and voice. So yeah, that's how I use the tool, and that's what I made.
And did you get any insights of what did it allow you to express things you'd already been thinking about, or was there anything new for you?
It helped me find the language and different parts of the puzzle that I hadn't really thought about, because it's such a big problem and it does affect so many people in different ways. So it allowed me to find like the niche categories that I may not have thought about, and kind of compartmentalize which parts of the SDGs would help in which ways. And I don't know, it was a good organization tool for me, because a lot of these health and environmental problems that we focus on, especially one as large as this, it's easy to forget about different things. So this wheel was a good tool to get me to actively think about different parts of environmental determinants of health and all the various components that go into increasing the awareness and conversation and policy making for all people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Emma. I'm very excited about the comment that I saw that Carmencita said she was able to make it work. Carmencita, do you want to share? Emma, you can stop sharing if you want. Great, thank you. If you want to share it, we'd love to see it. No pressure, but you got me curious now.
I'm going to try and see if I can do that.
Okay, take your time. There we go. Okay, do you want to tell us about your challenge?
So my challenge really was about trying to get a population of women who have distinct differences in the type of breast cancer that they have based on their ethnicity, and as distinct from diagnosing that in that population as distinct from diagnosing breast cancer in other populations. whereas the current means of diagnosis is primarily designed for a different population other than the one that I'm targeting. And so for that reason, I guess it's a personal thing for me because I've had several family members die from cancer and have always been diagnosed very late in the process because of that.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm trying to see how I can best work to increase the diagnostic capabilities and the sensitivity in terms of trying to get people to understand that there are differences in terms of the types of cancer. It's not really something that is widely taught in terms of oncology or in the current school system as it is now. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Increase awareness, increase the ability to detect, and of course, detect earlier. So I went through the wheel and came up with a number of different components. And some of them are very difficult to ascertain because cancer is such an insidious thing and it's such a subtle thing. And trying to actually determine the point sources is kind of almost impossible. So for me, I was looking at, going through the wheel and just answering the different questions. And some of the things that were there, yeah, well, it is environmental, but how much of it is environmental? I'm looking at more toxins and things like that in the environment as opposed to, climate change per se. So those kinds of things kind of made you sort of like hone in on specifics, right? And in the environment, and also in the disparities in terms of economic situations and ability of institutions and governments to actually recognize that that population, small as it is worth the effort of making these changes. So that was the revelation for me, is that, how subtle the things are and how difficult it would be to convince people because the statistics may not be there in enough abundance. It's not been a focus of research or anything like that for a lot of populations, although it is, at least not in North America. You can get stats and so on if you're looking at people that are in, let's say, Africa or someplace like that, but it's not really as well as it should be here. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing something that has touched your life in that way. I mean, it's one thing to do an exercise. It's another thing to do something like that is the work of your heart. So thank you for doing that. When I listen to you, it reminds me of another thing I wanted to say about this. I might have said it in the beginning, but sometimes we approach things as, what are we doing as healthcare providers and intervention designers and all of that. But there are areas where this can also reveal aspects that, we have responsibilities because we have this information, and there is an issue of advocacy and citizenship and kind of making institutions just. And so, it isn't a little thing because it's such a big thing. And, small populations do get attention. So why isn't that happening here? And I think with breast cancer, it's really, it is really complicated because you have gender and race both interacting here probably to make it harder for these women. And I see that on your graph, the education one is fat, but you don't have particular numbers. Probably it was all of them, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And so, to really do some more thinking about this, but you get into, I almost think, and one critique I have the SDGs is, it isn't really a rights-based framework. It does do some lip service to rights, but some of our human rights-based frameworks could even be more useful to address this equity issue. And I guess SDG 10 might have, as well as 5, might have some insights there. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a photo? Did you have a photo that you wanted to put in?
Yeah, and I was able to do it, but it was before I put
before
this
you
here
download
together.
it.
Yeah,
Show
yeah,
us the photo just so we can close the loop. You don't have to put it in the middle, but if you're able, if you want to, we would love to see it, is what I should say.
yeah. Okay, I'll put it in there after. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And you can stop sharing whenever you're ready.
Yep. There we go.
Thank you. Does anybody else have something that they would like to share? I have a few more things that I'll go back to kind of PowerPoint mode briefly. Well, actually, we have an expert here. Abe, do you have anything you want to say about the app itself?
Just that it's been a collaborative project, and it's been nice to see it develop, and it's it's a work in progress, so we appreciate any feedback that we can get.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so I love, even though Carmel is gone, I love what she said, because she was kind of like saying, so what, right? And I think we should always say, so what? If it's in our minds, we need to say it out loud, because it doesn't matter if you can produce beautiful graphics that look like multi-petal daisies if they don't lead us to action. And so how does this fit in with planning, improvement, and action? And I guess what I want to just share some things that I know are familiar to many of you, because some of you have studied quality improvement with me, but I want to share my thinking about how I did this and why. So when you do implementation science or systems thinking or quality improvement, there are different methodologies that, in my view, they're only slightly different, and it can get into a big conversation about what approach are we using. So when we developed these SDG 360 thinking analysis tools, the idea was that the mindsets and the tools and visualizations could work in a lot of different kinds of planning and implementation type approaches that might be dominant in different forms of governance. So it would be more resilient. So rather than designing a 10-step process, that then people already have a way that they get stuff done, we wanted to develop a tool that allows you to find success stories, make these linkages, and do the matrix analysis where appropriate that could be used with any of these processes. So in the long run, we'll have this tool and these 5 approaches that make it easier for people to share their experiences across settings and within settings and with communities, from experts to community members and all of that. And so I just wanted to share a few kind of images here of how this fits in with things like quality improvement methodologies. So, you could very much use SDG 360 thinking throughout as the analyze step, as the design of implementation step, even as a tool for when you do plan, do, study, act, which is a very typical science kind of change cycle. You could use it for when you're going to do the iteration of changes as you're cycling through improvement to one level and then another cyclical improvement. Here's another QI framework: plan, do, check, act. Again, this analysis can guide all of that because it helps you to understand what's happening. It helps you to communicate what you're doing. It can help you to design smarter interventions. Here's another quality improvement cycle that I did many, many years ago. It's from 1992. I'm not going to talk about it too much. This is the one I use now that involves envisioning change. One of my big insights after 30 years was a lot of times we're focused on a problem, but we really don't know what it would look like if the problem were solved. And so focusing on envisioning, the outcome that you want, it can be important. And so you go through these, forming a team, analyzing a problem. Well, that's where you'd begin with your SDG 360 thinking. It helps with also description, the multiple perspectives, and even it might even be a map, for interventions. There are lots of different kinds of tools and checklists that can be informed by these analysis, graphs and data that you'd use. Some people use lean as a management approach. This fits in here very well. And that idea of co-benefits and reducing waste and error is a big part of it. So it's encoding some of those basic principles about waste and efficiency there. And the same with the Six Sigma, which tends to be a little bit more lean, tends to be focusing on waste and extra steps or redundancy, where Six Sigma, not to oversimplify, but it focuses on defects and error a little more. So again, this can help you with identifying vulnerable areas or connections maybe related to error that you hadn't thought of. We have the SEEPS model at UW-Madison, which is an engineering-based framework for healthcare that is phenomenal and used around the world. And again, this kind of thinking, this is a little more localized, but you can think about how technology and tools and different kinds of system elements relate to the SDGs. Implementation science, again, this framework, it can be used in this context. Learning healthcare systems and collaboratives. Design thinking is an approach to designing change that involves, guess what, processes and mindsets. And this, I think you heard me say, processes and mindsets, because one of the really powerful things about design thinking is you can develop a mindset, a more holistic practice, instead of worrying necessarily and thinking procedurally about it. And I think the SDGs gives you a language and a mindset to complement things that you're doing. Participatory action research can be facilitated. Also, when I was presenting this a couple of weeks ago, and someone who does a lot of climate change work, Dr. Jonathan Patz, who some of you may know, he said, well, this reminds me of environment and health impact assessment that we've been doing. And it's true. And you can look at that and you can do that work. And if you use the SDGs as the framework for the conversation, again, it leaves people with a language, it gives them a structure. You can think about how these visualizations would allow people to get precise with things. I guess what I want to say is all of these approaches have some common elements and unique strengths. So when you're using the SDGs and this SDG 360 thinking for action, you want it to happen in a context where there's participatory approaches, where there's clarity of defining the challenge, which we went through that exercise to do that, is there, that there's a change strategy that is, and it doesn't always have to be creative. Sometimes a change strategy is, let's get people to follow the protocol. Don't think that good routines done well all the time are a bad thing. A lot of problems in our systems are just lacking that, so regularity and routine compliance with procedure is not trivial, but sometimes you do need something creative and an innovation. Using data and evidence, I think using these tools without then turning to the data to validate. Remember, what you put there is really just a map of hypotheses. Sometimes you're sure and you don't need to check the data, like some of you are experts in your field, but there might be some things where you should question the conventional wisdom in your field. Question the connections. Remember, I talked about the importance of questioning and understanding complicities and what really happened and histories associated. So there's a lot of times when our assumptions are wrong. Using data and information from traditional sources and indigenous forms of knowledge, as well as quantitative and narrative data, all of that can be helpful. I think for the SDGs and for the place that we're working from, being human-centered and community-focused is important. Being anthropocentric and being human-centric are two different things. When you're human-centric, it means you're aware of this two-way relationship with the environment, with sustainability, and all this way that we want to have, like a safe space for life, right? For all life forms, not only human life. We're being anthropocentric means we're willing to spend every other kind of resource for humans to live in a certain way. So when I say human-centered, I think it's important not to overcorrect and say that it isn't about humans, because those kinds of rationales can really be problematic as we try to address the needs of migrating populations, people who are impacted by complex emergencies, and so on. So we need to, center human life and human dignity in a way that is human-centered and life-affirming for all species, rather than sort of anthropocentric in the negative connotation. And then it always has to be iterative, right? So no, you're not going to design the perfect intervention that solves everything. You're going to make progress, and you're going to have to do a big relook and do another cycle. An iterative cyclical work, it's what we all do. It's even how we keep ourselves going. Like my heart has to keep beating on and on, same thing over and over again, right? Otherwise I can't stay alive. So our systems are the same. And I think these are the 6 common elements that if your organization is using a system of management or information that doesn't include these 6 elements, I think you have a problem in terms of effectively doing SDG 360 thinking. But there's many different sort of forms and brands, if you will, and methodologies that work, and that when you look at them, yes, they have these critical elements. So I wanted to share that, because this is about getting ready for action. And ultimately, the tool will have the SDG, the app will have a bank where you can look by topic and get some suggestions of what other communities have done. It'll be a little while, but our vision was that. Now people can go and do that on their own based on the analysis. So it's still important to do this good work. Don't let a pretty picture, isn't this pretty? Don't let this pretty picture stop you from taking action. Then I guess I want to wrap up because we're getting close to time here with, here I am, very gung-ho, all about the SDGs. So at the same time, I promised my students that I'd look at things critically. Remember I said that at the beginning? So we are at halftime with the SDGs, and it's, we're 7 years into a 15-year program. The uptake at the local level has been slow. The strategies for local work like this have been slow to come, but it's still, there will be another movement. There will be follow-up, just like from the MGGs to the SDGs. And so, if I were asked to be on a expert board to think about the SDGs, I have a couple of things that I, already can see we might want to make better. And it's because I like the approach and it's so useful that I spend the time thinking how to make it better. Otherwise, I would dismiss it and use some other kind of imperfect good thing. So I'm one of these people. Perfectionists are like this, and we can't let the good be the enemy of the best and not use these consensus-based tools, but we have to be looking forward. So one of the challenges that I find with the SDGs is poverty. They've used extreme poverty as the measure. And it's something like people who live on $125 a day, the numbers adjusted a little. But even if you got that to 0, there is so much poverty related suffering left in the world. So by having that poverty line be so low, it can give us a mistaken perception of how many people are living with extreme poverty. A huge percentage now of the human population does not have, access to clean potable water. It's like 2.5 billion or something. So that is a big number. It's almost the same number of people who have cell phones. So we have some issues related to distribution of wealth and assets that are extreme, and the poverty metrics don't totally do it. The other thing is the SDGs don't really say that people have a right to housing or that we should try to provide housing for everybody. The cities say that we should have a sustainable housing stock. Under poverty, there's some language about having legal systems allow for people to purchase or whatever. But because poverty focuses on this income thing and it's negatively formed, like there's no poverty, instead of it being positively formulated, like people have their basic needs met. If we were formulating it positively, we would be talking about housing, housing and basic clothing. We have food and water there, but we'd have the housing and our basic material needs probably would even be an SDG. Because if you had no money, but you had housing and a way to, you don't really necessarily need a lot of money the way you need a dwelling, the way you need housing. So, and the same for transportation. Transportation is everything about freedom of movement, and yet it's buried as 11.2. So I think transportation could be higher. I already said what I think about the inland freshwater ecosystems. As someone who lives in the Great Lakes region, we don't really make that clear because the life underwater is marine, is oceans, and we really need to, clarify what's going on in the land. LGBTQ plus rights are not specified while they are at risk around the world. And I think every human has a right to dignity and life and healthcare and more. And so we need to figure out ways to make that really clear as we complement these SDGs with our own language that's appropriate in our different settings. And it's okay if we don't all agree about that. We don't have to agree about everything, but I feel like, you know, to honor people in my life, I have to speak up for their right to live and breathe and be safe and have healthcare, even if I didn't agree with their lifestyles myself, you know. Then I think the other thing is there is a little bit of lip service, but not much about how rich and important our Indigenous history, science, and culture and knowledges are from Indigenous communities and local knowledge about place all over the world. That is, you know, it leads you into this shortcoming in relation to localization. We're forgetting, you know, I think it's almost like the tiredness of a top-down approach where how am I going to reach everybody? And you forget that everywhere you go, there are people welcoming you with a hot meal and care and assets, right? So it shouldn't be as overwhelming as we think. And if we really have a bottom-up approach and a distributed complex ecosystem mindset, localization is the only way it could go. It's a fast way, and it's a better way to see the assets in communities. Implementation strategies, I said a little bit about all of that. I said how I want to defend the complexity. I don't love the fact that there are 17, or if you're going to have 17 and 169 targets, at least find one more target and make it 170 so people can hold it in their mind as a 17 times 10, you know. But anyway, it's okay to have complex webs in response to complex solutions, but we need to be able to communicate them clearly and set priorities. And while we have a complex understanding, there are causal places where you can still intervene in a linear and cause and effect way because you have the complexity and the systemic issues in mind. So both of those can work. And I think sometimes too, when we set goals, we worry about setting goals that we can achieve. And I think really the Sustainable Development Framework, people like me, and I think most of the people on this call, except Emma and a few of the young ones, we're working toward things that we're probably not going to see in our lifetime. And we do that because we believe in the future, and we have hope in the unseen. And we think we have a moral imperative to behave that way, being future oriented, being oriented toward young people. At the same time that I think that's important, I want to, remind, I don't think I have to in this circle, but often I'm in spaces where I'm needing to remind people that some of the things that they're very worried about as future states are how people are already living in many parts of the world. And so learning to live with extreme weather, learning to live with, uneven access to water. And so there are, besides creating more equity and justice around that, there's a lot to be learned. And, the solutions are going to come from people who have figured out how to face struggles together and have a culture of care as the center of their lives. That's where the thriving will come from. That's where, the assets, and that if there is a bottomless cup in this life, I think that is what it is, those kinds of communities of care and interdependence. So those are the things that I think about when I have to get myself motivated to do really hard work. I know that when I'm talking to people, I know enough of you to know how hard your work is. Some of you are really carrying a lot of water in this world. And so I'm very, very honored that that you spent all this time on this seminar. And I guess I want to leave it to maybe hear some last words from you and to thank you all for being here. We will be sharing all the resources. Your email will come to me because you've been signed up for this webinar. And so let us know. We have, Judy says, I tried the cost work first, then I've done a couple of wheels. The partners are doing pretty complex work and they will be doing the wheels as they're doing the work. So thank you, Judy. That's a nice thought. we'll keep watching to hear from others. But again, thank you for being on this webinar. Please think about SDG 360 thinking as something that you want to share in your community and your own work. And I hope the app, which we'll be getting to you soon, we are thinking that by December 15th or so, it should be in good shape, and maybe sooner, but mid-December. So it will be a New Year's Festival of Lights holiday celebration for us. And thank you again to everybody who worked on it. I look forward to staying in touch with many of you as well.
Thank you. Have a great day or great
Thank
good
you.
night.
I'm going to celebrate now. We have a volleyball game at UW-Madison, and our UW women, they win. So
Oh, so go, Madison.
yeah, I told my husband it's one of the free things you can do. You go to the game, you watch your team win, and you go home. You know, they're very good. So Anna, how did you hear about this?
So I'm part of CUGH, and I went to the CUGH meeting. I know Keith Martin, and actually
Great.
we are trying to implement a Latin American CUGH, like a branch. So we've been having meeting with him, and yeah, I'm very involved with
Well,
the
I'd like to, well,
global
I'll
health.
share with you that we have a Latin American version of this. I'm fluent in Spanish and can do stuff in Latin America, not Portuguese, but we have a Latin American webinar version of this where it's not translated, it's adapted. So all of the examples are from Latin America. And because of how we did this with this minimalist text mindset, it would be very easy to get the app in Spanish. So if somebody wanted to, you know, prepare the text, I might even be able to find a student who could do it. We could have the app in Spanish. So
yeah, please, if you could share with me, I'd really appreciate that.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Keep me in the loop if there's anything I can do for you. I think Latin American CUGH would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have some type of organization, ALAZAG, but it hasn't been too active, or, you know, it was created and right after we had the pandemic, so things kind of cooled down. And you know, the pandemic showed us how global health is important, you know.
Oh, I know.
Global health, One Health approach and everything.
It also showed you how much we can do virtually.
Yeah, it helped a lot. So many things that we can do now.
We can do a lot of this kind of thing.
I really enjoyed. And on the CUGH in April in Washington, D.C., I also attended one of the satellite sessions on, it was on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and One Health, and with the 4PAWS people, and it was very nice. And I like these breakout sessions when we need, makes us, you know, participate in the discussion. We end up learning much more than just listening.
Well,
So
our
very
UW
much
Global
for the
Health
opportunity.
Institute is very One Health oriented, and I will find your email and share some information with you about it. You may already know
Thank
that.
you. I'm gonna write here in the chat.
Yeah, great. I get your I have it already. Well, write it in the chat, because if you didn't,
it's easier.
If you didn't register early, I might not have it. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lori, and you guys. It was nice meeting you and talking to you.
Great.
Bye.
Bye. Anybody else want to share? Sarika, thank you for being our CUGH person.